Namaste.
Namaste. That's our Corona. Namaste. People are legit doing the foot handshake. Like several people have done this to me. Be like, all right, yep, Corona.
One of our
tap.
One of my coworkers, Bobby, on Instagram. He's like, handshakes are disgusting right now. You have to do other things. And he put a video of him and another coworker, Katie, having their feet with their toes interlocking. It was so funny.
It just triggers everyone.
Yeah, he was like, you can't handshake anymore. You have to do other methods. And their toes were interlocking.
That's like that is the best content on social media is these photos that will just trigger people when they see that. There was one where this guy was on a plane and he was barefoot and he put his foot on the armrest of the person in front of him, and it got like, I don't know, whatever the max number of Twitter users are that could share. That's how many people share.
That's awesome.
This thing.
We should I should take that from him and share it on my stuff, because I'll get some of I'll steal their clout. Last podcast we talked about Run the World.
Yeah.
Okay, so
retraction.
Yeah, major retraction. I signed up. Me and Alan did it. Sorry guys, it didn't work.
Platform sucks right now.
Platform sucks. I think that if they're listening, you can get it right, but you missed it this time.
And you tweeted at them. Did they respond to you?
Yeah, good customer service, and they I sent it to you last night. I couldn't go to bed last night, 2 or 3 in the morning. They just screwed up.
So it's just kind of buggy right
now.
Yeah. All right,
buggy.
that's unfortunate. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
We'll try another one at some point.
But we definitely did it. Unfortunately, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Is there any? Okay, so we can get
other updates. How about Henry with the microphone? Talking to that. Get that smooth voice, that Barry Manilow voice on here.
What's up, guys? I'm Henry.
Oh man, look at that. New fan favorite.
That's awesome.
From the Joe Rogan Experience for this podcast.
Powerful young Henry.
But he is leaving.
I know, but for now, it's powerful young Henry.
I am leaving in a week, but Alan will be replacing me, so you'll have a new fresh face.
That's awesome.
So now when we need to look stuff up and then Henry finds the information because we don't know what the hell we're talking about, now he can say it into the mic, which is great.
Are there any other updates that we have to talk about? Run the World didn't work. Henry has a mic.
No, that's good.
We asked people to subscribe and unsubscribe and send videos. I don't think it worked.
Don't think that worked. But podcast is growing anyways, so I feel happy. We're up, I think, 55% since last month.
Which is awesome.
Solid growth.
If you are listening to this, you don't have to do much. Just share this with a friend, and you could tag either of us on Twitter, and I'll for sure reply. Shaan will he will, and he might.
I may or may not reply. But here's the thing. I was on my way over here today, and I like to get in the mood. Like, I like to prime the pump. I was like, all right, what should I listen to that's going to get the ideas flowing, get the wheels turning, so that when I come in here, my brain is already firing. There's no podcast to listen to that's like this, dude. I hate to say it. There's no other podcast that does this, where it's like, there's a lot of good podcasts where it's great storytelling, great interviews, but nobody is playing mental hopscotch with ideas. And so I couldn't get anything to get me going. But it's a good sign for us.
When I wasn't here, Stu did it, and I listened to it and I loved it. And I loved the notes even more.
Right.
I loved the notes. I had no idea about the whole Christian tithing business. Awesome. And that's when I know it's good, because I typically hate anything I'm involved in.
And how about our guy, I forgot his name, it's like, I'm going to butcher it, it's like Latol or something like that.
A brew?
No, not a brew. A brew is with the notes, but the guy who's doing the tithing business,
Oh yes, a guy messaged us. It sounds like he was English. He must be in England.
He's in the UK. And he's basically, so his thing was, we didn't give him the idea.
The background.
So the background is, we were talking about, me and Stu were talking about, okay, cool, religion tech, church tech. And one of the ideas that came up, or one of the things I told him, I said, somebody had reached out and said, give me 3 months. I'm going to be on the podcast because I'm going to build this thing. It's badass. You guys should know, you're talking about church tech. There's this company that does digital tithing. It's called PushPay.
It's big.
4 billion processed, 98 million in revenue. There's another one called Tidely. And he's like, but they're not big in the UK or Europe right now. I'm going to build it in the UK and Europe. And in the Facebook group, which we'll put the link in the show notes, he's providing these video updates. So he posted his first video update. I don't know if you saw it, where he's like, I got 23 customers, churches who are interested in doing this, including one that runs 2,000 churches.
And he's young.
And he's a young guy. He's a smart guy. And he's like, look, here's how I came up with this idea, and I'm doing it. I'm going to provide video updates every week in this thing. And I love I love when people share their work. I love when people work in public. I think it's a extremely underrated thing to do. And every time you do it, you get this army of people who are rooting for you and opening up doors for you as you go.
I completely agree.
And it keeps you accountable, which
I'm
is good.
excited to see what he's going to do. Hopefully his next video is a little shorter.
Yeah, this one was like 6 minutes.
8 minutes.
I watched 2 of the 8, but I
got it.
enjoyed all 2 that I watched.
I like that guy. I guess we should put Abreu's. I think that's how you say his name.
Abreu. Maybe?
Abreu.
Yeah.
We should put his show notes in the
description.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This guy is a listener. He just makes these great notes. We don't know him. I mean, I met him recently. He called me a little bitch when I first met him. That's what he did.
Just to shock you or what?
Well, I met him and he goes, "Hey, why don't you follow me on Twitter?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm sorry." And he goes, "Just stop being a little bitch and follow me." That's one of the first things he said when I met him. I was like, "Nice to meet you." So kudos to that guy for whatever you want to give him.
I had
for
this
being bold.
blog post. I used to try to blog about business back in the day when we were doing our very first startup right out of college. And none of my posts got read by anybody. Nobody cared. But one post went semi-viral, and it was called The First to Curse Advantage. And basically I was saying how in a meeting, the first person who uses a curse word sort of establishes himself as the person who just doesn't give a fuck about the they put themselves in a position of power.
Right.
And it also builds a different level of rapport because you're obviously using informal language with somebody else. And you're demonstrating that you're not seeking their approval in a way. And so I always, in meetings, I do this. I try to be the first to curse in a meeting.
But can I say, I don't love that. And I'm like...
Because you don't like cursing in general? Or?
No, I mean, I actually, when I hear myself curse, I'm like, man, I sound kind of trashy.
I agree. I don't like when I hear myself do it. And I think I do it too much. But I've noticed in meetings, it changes the dynamic like instantly. And for better or for worse. But I
think there's a difference between being crude and being cursing, actually. So, like, saying bitch, I fucking hate.
Right.
Oh, my God. Did you just hear that? That wasn't on purpose. So, I don't like when people say that. I don't... quick story before we get into this. I got married in September.
Yeah.
And I got married at a Catholic church, and you got to go meet with the priest ahead of time. And I was really nervous because I'm not practicing. I don't go to church. But the whole wedding was... They have to approve it, and the whole wedding was on the line, right? So I had to like be a good Catholic or at least appear like one. And I remember I was sitting there, and the priest was asking me and my future wife, about like, so do you guys agree on children? What do you think about birth control? All this stuff or whatever he was asking, and I would just say whatever I thought had to be
the right answer.
I was very nervous. I was like, yes, sir. Yes, we go to church 3 times. Like I just said everything, and then my phone rings, and I was so nervous. I go, oh fuck, sorry. It went really loud, and then he looked at me, and I was like, "Shit, my bad. I didn't mean to cuss." And I was so embarrassed and mortified.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
but he let it go.
He let it go.
Good guy.
Yeah, he let it go. And then I made a joke about how asked him what school he went to, and he said he had a lot of student debt, and he said, he's like, yeah, but the church.
Is he a young guy,
like in his 30s, or maybe
Okay.
late 30s, and he said, but the church pays for it, and I made like a joke like, so that's why you joined, and he didn't.
He didn't appreciate that.
He didn't like that. You want to get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Can you make that bigger? I can't read that from here. There we go.
Okay, let's start with an idea. Curly girl hair. So you guys in Trends did a post about the natural hair movement.
Yeah, that's a big thing, and mixed race and black women.
And so talk a little bit about what was in the report, and then I'll tell you sort of what I've seen separate from that.
It sounds like you're more interested in it. You tell me what was in
it. All right. So I'll start with so my sister-in-law has super curly hair, and
if you've never seen Shaan, he's Indian.
I'm Indian, and she's Indian, and she's got super curly hair, and curly hair takes a lot of maintenance, right? Like gets humid, boom, it's frizzy, and you have like there's this episode of Friends where Monica's hair is like an afro. That happens, or it's flat, or you want to straighten it, or whatever. It's a lot of maintenance of curly hair. And so she was telling me, she's like, yeah, I downloaded this, like I joined this thing. I bought this PDF that's called the Curly Girl Guide or something like that. And it's this method to like taming your hair and because I told her, I was like, your hair looks great nowadays. Like, what have you been doing? And I just thought she would say like, oh, I use this other product. She's like, no, there's like a 12-step process I'm doing
just
every
for Indian
night.
woman?
anybody with curly hair,
'Cause
black women, anywhere else.
So my wife, if you're, well, I guess they wouldn't be able to see this. My wife's black. She's half white.
She's
half
also
black.
not here, even if
Yeah.
they're watching.
Yeah, she's half white and half black, and she buys a lot of this stuff as well.
Right. And so like there's a whole thing of like, you know, when you go to sleep, you need to wrap your hair in a certain way to sort of like whatever the oils, blah, blah, blah. And so then, and like some basics that you just don't do. So like she, you know, she had curly hair her whole life, but didn't know, oh, I'm not supposed to use shampoo in the same way that most people use shampoo. And so she was telling me about some of these differences. Anyways, opportunity. I was like, I like these businesses where you could put out content and information that just helps people, and then sort of on the back end sell the kit. That's like, oh, by the way, like if you just want to push a button and get the solution, I have the kit that has all the shit you need. Because she spent hours researching all the different products that like, what is the best version of this oil I'm supposed to have? What is the best version of the shampoo for me? And so anyways, I think there's an opportunity to do this curly girl hair kit because there's this huge number of women that have curly hair. The spend is in the multi-billions per year in the U.S. for how this gets treated. And there is this natural hair movement where it's less about doing these really damaging things like permanently straightening your hair or, you know, weaves and whatnot. Like now there's a sort of a natural hair movement. And so people need content, like education, plus the tools, this sort of the hair care kit to take care of the hair.
Okay,
So
I
that's an
love
idea.
that. Henry, can you do me a favor? On a new tab, type in Reddit curly hair. So there's a whole subreddit. One of the ways I like to look at validation and ideas for different companies is I like to look at the engagement and size of a particular subreddit. How many subscribers does this subreddit have? I can't read that from here.
Use that mic you got, Henry. What are you doing?
37,000.
That's pretty good, I think, actually, for a curly hair, and particularly because Reddit is mostly men.
Right.
And this is a woman's focused curly hair subreddit with
Exactly. So great way to sort of validate the demand and the community aspect to this where people are sharing information, recommending products to each other. The other side of this is it photographs great. So, you know, before and after, I believe, is the best ad that you can do. Before, which is a photo, after, which is a better photo. And you don't even need to show your product. You just need to show whatever I took gave me this outcome. I was here, now I'm there.
So my wife loves this subreddit. Okay, so here's further validation. Okay, so particularly, so I think that the angle here is you have to go ethnicity or race specific.
Yeah.
So whether it's Indian, I have no idea if Asian women suffer from this, but if they do do that, I know from firsthand experience that mixed race women, or whether they're white and black or any other combination, suffer from this as well.
Right.
And further validation is Fenty. Rihanna has that brand that sold to the Louis Vuitton company, or what's it called?
LVMH.
LVMH. And you could read about the deal. I think it was valued at $800 million. And a lot of her thing is towards
Yeah, of course.
mixed races. And then another idea here, and everyone knows about this woman, but Kayla Itsinu.
It seems.
It seems.
What's
her thing called?
It's names.
Sweat or some.
Yeah, Sweat's her app.
This is where I sound like a.
Your wife does it. My wife does it.
Yeah, I sound like an idiot because I'm a guy and I don't pay attention to
Yeah,
this
this
stuff.
whole segment is like bros trying to talk about, you know, products they don't understand. But I'm fascinated. I'm interested. I'm trying. And everyone loves a tryer.
So Kayla's thing, I heard that's a $100 million a year company.
It is. The fitness app itself, which
That's
is like
crazy,
phenomenal.
and it was just built off her Instagram following. So that's crazy. I'm
So
into
she
this.
started with the same thing. The bikini body guide, I think, was her content that she
It's
was
just
put
a
out,
PDF.
and then it was PDF, and the PDF got circulated everywhere. And basically, she allowed the like paid PDF to get bootlegged and just shared everywhere. And what that did was it just gave her tons of awareness, tons of marketing, and then she launched the app, which you couldn't bootleg and you had to pay for, and then boom.
And the most interesting part about her thing was she's like mainstream popular, and typically when things are mainstream popular, maybe sometimes like people who think they're cool can think it's kind of lame. And Sarah's an Ivy League educated New Yorker, and she was like, "Oh, I love this PDF."
Right.
And so she has access to all types of interesting things, and she still uses it. And I thought that was amazing that people really respected and liked it.
Yeah, she comes across very well. If you've ever seen her content, she's not like she's not hateable. Like she doesn't come across as hateable.
I thought that's cool. Oh, and last thing, Diva Curl. Have you heard of Diva Curl?
I have not. No.
Another mixed race shampoo. Maybe it's for black women, or maybe it's, I don't know I forget if it's black women or mixed race women. That's what we use for shampoo, and it was acquired for $250 million.
Nice. And there's some things on the opposite side, like Tristan Walker, who was, I think, either the co-founder or first employee of Foursquare, left to start his own African American men's skincare product company,
Walker Brands,
where it was like, shaving stuff because the hair is different, it's coarse, the traditional shaving gear was causing problems, and didn't work out, went under. And that kind of brings me to, I don't know why it went under exactly. I don't know if it was the business fundamentals.
Why they just raised too much money and fucked everything up.
Okay, so speaking of that, Atrium folded.
Yeah, so Atrium is a company that has raised $70 million.
$75 million.
$75 million. You made a great comment that I've stolen and I've told everyone. But basically, Atrium, what they did, they never did anything really, unfortunately. They tried to do a bunch of things. So at first, it was almost like you'd pay a flat fee and get a service done. And then they were like, all right, let's create software so lawyers can contribute with their clients and you can see what they're doing.
Right.
But you said, why didn't they just make a law firm?
Exactly. So basically, Atrium, if you don't know, started by Justin Kahn, who's the founder of Justin.tv, which became Twitch, and well-known guy in Silicon Valley. So he raises $75 million pretty much out the gate, like in 2 rounds, I believe. But the first round, I think they raised $10 million out of $90 million valuation on just Justin saying, hey, I'm going to do a new thing. And then they raised more money, and they raised it all pre-product market fit. So before they knew what they had and what the market wanted, they raised a ton of money. And what I call this is the curse of money, expectations, and people. And so what does that mean? The curse of money is when you give too much money before you actually know what you're doing, that actually decreases your odds of success. Doesn't increase your odds of success.
Right.
The second is expectations. Justin Kahn, famous guy, serial entrepreneur, raises a bunch of money at a high valuation. Now you have the weight of those expectations, which makes you less nimble, less agile, and less responsive to changing up your own.
And you know what he told me? He spoke at HustleCon. I hung out with him backstage. One of my secrets of a HustleCon is I make everyone come an hour early.
Right.
And I lie to them about when they have to speak.
Right.
So I get
Starts at 2.
Yep. So I hang out with them backstage and I meet all these people. I told one guy, the founder of Zapier, I hung out with that dude all day, Wade, doing this thing. And what Justin told me was, he goes, I have a chip on my shoulder that Twitch sold for $1 billion. This has to be $10 billion or I'm not interested. And I was like, I don't know if that's a healthy attitude.
I don't know, Justin.
He goes, I have a chip on my shoulder, which I think that is actually healthy. I'm all for that. But he told me, he's like, here's what the expectations are. And I was like, that's a little crazy, dude, but whatever.
Yeah, that is a little crazy. And the last one is just the curse of money, expectations, and people. And people is when you have all this money and you have all these expectations, you start hiring a bunch of people. So they laid off 100 people.
I think 200.
Why do they even have 100 or 200 people?
And they were lawyer type. I mean, these people cost a lot.
Right. And so before you have product market fit, you want to have as few people as possible. You want to have as sort of lightweight expectations. You want to be extremely nimble and agile. So they tried to do a hybrid. Like you said, I went to one. So one thing they did really well was Justin leveraged what he had. Leverage your assets, right? So his asset was he's got a name in the tech community. So here's what he did. He first, when he raised money, he raised from like a bunch of VCs because he knew, well, they have companies. They're going to send their client. They're going to send those are my future clients.
And I love what you're about to say now. I think that's even better.
And so I don't know if you know, but so I'm talking about these weekend things he hosted.
Yep.
Yeah. So did you go to one?
Nope.
So I went to one of these.
Went to a few.
So he basically said, cool, weekend workshop. Justin Kahn is going to do an Atrium Academy workshop on the weekend. And I don't remember what the promise was. I think it was like how to raise money for your company. And so I went to one of them because I wanted to see what was up. And it's a kind of an all-day thing
And
at the Atrium office. And Justin's a very charismatic, magnetic speaker.
Yep.
And so he starts telling the Atrium stories, like, when we started this company, and he's like, one of the things about, I always thought, he's like, I became an involuntary power user of legal services. I love that phrase. He's like, because, when we were selling Twitch for $1 billion, we needed a bunch of lawyers. And when I did this other thing we raised money for, I needed a bunch of lawyers. And I do all these investments and I need a bunch of lawyers. So I just realized, man, the legal system sucks. And everyone's nodding their head. And he's like, it's weird that you don't know the price of something. They bill you by the hour, so they're incentivized to spend as much time and bill you as much as they can. You want it fast, and you want to know your price. We're like, yeah, you're right, Justin. I do want that. And he's like, so the second thing is, he's like, why? I looked into it. Why isn't there a competitor? No. The second one was, he's like, I was having dinner with my friend who's a lawyer, and I asked her, what do you guys use for project management? She's like, what do you mean? He's like, do you use Trello or Asana? And she's like, I don't know what those words are. He's like, lawyers don't use anything for their project management. Isn't that crazy? And we're like, yeah, that's crazy. Last one, he's like, so then I was like, why doesn't somebody start a competitor? He's like, I realized there's some legislation that says you can't start a law firm. And I'm going to butcher what the actual legal problem was, but like there was a rule: you cannot start a law firm unless you're a lawyer, and
Yeah.
unless you've been a lawyer for a certain amount of time or whatever it was. He's like, so that's why no outsider has done this. But luckily, we found a loophole that let us start this law firm. So we're one of the only new law firms that started not by these people. And by the end of it, you're like, dude, take my money. I want to invest in your thing.
Your impression of Justin Kahn is so condescending and so funny.
I don't mean it that way. I was impressed. I'm trying to say he told this story and I was eating it up. And so I was like, this is amazing. This whole workshop was amazing. He brought in his friends who were giving advice and they were fucking awesome. They were so good at giving advice. And so anyways, by the end of it, and he gives me advice. He was just like, because we were building on the Twitch platform with like a Twitch sort of like the streaming app thing. And he was like, yeah, we thought about doing that and we don't think it's valuable. I don't think your thing's going to be valuable. And he was pretty much right. We had to pivot. And so anyways, by the end of this, I was like, this was an amazing way to acquire customers.
I agree.
And that's my like long-winded way of saying he used his assets. He did these workshops. It's not a scalable thing, but man,
I don't like when you
he
say
won
that.
people over.
I think you're so wrong.
What,
when you say
that
it's
it's
not a
not
scalable
scalable?
thing. First of all, you don't need that many customers for this thing to make a very large. And
He could have
meaningful.
got 100 clients easily within a couple months.
Yeah, and I hate when people say that. They go, "This isn't scalable." Like they'll talk about agencies and they'll say it's not scalable. It's like, what are you talking about? Some agencies have 20,000 people. That seems like it's scaled to me, like perfectly fine. I do think those are scalable, actually.
It depends, right? If you're a product that needs thousands and thousands of customers, then doing workshops with 20 people at a time is not going to get you there. So it's not scalable in that sense.
So you want to hear a cool story about that? The founder of Pandora, his name's Tim Westergen. I went and met with him. When I went and met with him, we went out to lunch, and he's like, "Oh, I forgot to do something. Can you walk with me?" And I walk with him, and then we go. And he goes, "I got to get a haircut," and so I just sit next to him. And this guy's worth probably $600 million. We go to Supercuts,
Right.
and he gets a haircut for $12, and we're sitting there in the barbershop. It's on a Tuesday at 1. No one's there, and he's telling me this story. I go, "What did you used to do? How'd you grow Pandora?" He goes, "Here's what I would do. Monday through Thursday," he goes, "I had a COO who ran the company. He goes, this was I think it was a little bit before social media was around. He said, I would email people and I would say, I'm going to be at this library in New York at this time. Any Pandora users in the area, come and talk to me." And he said he did that for 4 years. And he goes, "Here's the first one I did." And he showed me a picture of him at a coffee shop. He goes, 2 people showed up. And he goes, "Here's the last one I did." And he showed me a picture, and it was at the library, and there was 2,000 or 3,000 people there. He goes, "I would do that Monday to Thursday. I did meetups everywhere. All I did was travel, and I did it for years, and it worked out." He goes. I was like, "Did it work?" He goes, "Every time I did it, he goes, it would take a little while, but after a couple years of doing it, I would go to the South or I'd go to Atlanta, and we would see more advertisers come. So it was just like he goes, it worked out perfectly."
Right.
And because I said the same thing, I go, "Wow, that's a horrible waste of time." He goes, "No, it worked. We made a lot of money off of it, and I got to connect with users, and I would relay the feedback back to
Right.
my CEO, and they would do it."
Yeah. So that case, he's not trying to grow Pandora's active user base. He's taking fans and turning them into diehards, and he's generating advertising revenue, which you can get. That actually scales enough to where you can get advertisers, and he's getting feedback firsthand, which is like great for the product to get better. That's a dope story.
It's a dope story.
I love that story.
There's a clip.
Related to that, by the way, there's there's probably like 10 blog posts that matter the most if you're going to do a startup. One of them is the Paul Graham essay, "Do Things That Don't Scale," where he's talking about with Airbnb early on. And if you're kind of in the startup world, just fast forward 30 seconds. But if you're not, you'll like this story if you haven't heard it. So Airbnb is in Y Combinator. They're struggling. Airbnb is not really working. They have 20 customers or something low. And they go into Paul Graham's office. He's the advisor from Y Combinator. And he's like, "Okay, so tell me how it's going." And they're like, "Well, it's small and not really growing." And he's like, "Okay, but tell me, what have you learned from your customers? You've been out there. What did you learn?" And they're like, "Well, most of our customers are in New York, and they're putting their apartments up." He's like, "They're in New York?" They're like, "Yeah." Like, "Most of your customers are in New York?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "What are you doing here? Like, go to New York. You need to go to New York now. And like, why are you in San Francisco if your customers are in New York?" So he sent them over there. And what they did, which is something that nobody else was doing, was if you ever saw an apartment listing before, the photos looked like shit because it would be somebody on their crappy mobile phone at that time taking a photo of a dirty apartment and listing it for rent. And so it was like the worst sales pitch. And so they started themselves going in. They said, "Hey, can we send up?" They would tell their customers, "Hey, we want to do professional photos of your place. It increases bookings by 40%. are you open to that? And then they would show up as the professional photographer and be like, hey, by the way, I'm the founder. And they would take photos, and that Airbnb listing started to look great. And everyone told them this won't scale, and they also thought this won't scale. And to an extent, it did, because even now today, there's a sort of fleet of photographers that will come and take photos of your place to list it, because it was just that important, and they found a way to make it scale.
I think that's a great story. Another thing that shocks people is I think even if you have hundreds of thousands of users, maybe as high as millions, you could really, I've done this with us. I'll just call and talk. I only need to talk to about 10 people.
Right.
And I can see the pattern that represents tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
You could just tell. So like what you could do is A/B test shit and wait. If you're just starting, it's not gonna be significant. And that could work fine. If you just call 10 people, you really get the information you need.
Totally. I was talking to Emmett. So Emmett's the CEO of Twitch, where I'm working, and being at a big company has all these different weird things that aren't really related to my core interest, which is startups. So I ask Emmett all the time, just tell me about the early days. And so I asked him, I said, hey, when you guys were pivoting from Justin TV to Twitch, was that obvious? He's like, no, dude, at Justin TV, like less than 2% of the watch time was on video games. It wasn't obvious that this was the thing to do. He's like, I just liked it, and I thought there was an option. And he goes, and then I talked to a bunch of customers, and I said, do you have your notes from that? And he's like, yeah, I do. And so he sent me his notes from the initial conversations he had with all these streamers, all these customers.
Can we publish those?
No, I don't, probably not. But I was reading through them, and it was fascinating. So first lesson was just go ask the founder or CEO about the early days. I bet you they have a bunch of resources that are awesome. Like he sent me the old pitch decks and stuff like that. I think I sent you one slide, which was my favorite slide. The title of the slide, because it was a progress update for their early investors.
Yeah,
and it just said, we're like a bulldozer in a field full of flowers. And then it was a list of all the shit they got done that month. And I was like, this attitude, like if I said that today at Twitch, it would be like, what is this maniac saying? Like, why is your slide so aggressive? But that's how they were early on. So then he had all these notes of his customer conversations. And he always tells everybody at Twitch, he's like, go talk to people. By the 6th conversation, you'll hear the same thing over and over again. It takes 6 phone calls basically to figure out the pattern. And by the 6th one, you'll know. And you won't even want to do 50 conversations. You'll be like, all right, I can predict what this person's going to say before they even say it after 6.
That's awesome. I think we just got ourselves another clip.
Clip it.
What do you want to first of all, share that deck with me again, and also ask him if we can make that public.
Yeah, I will ask him, actually, because it's pretty cool.
What do you want to do?
The one thing I can share out of that, by the way, he asked 3 questions. He's like, I said, customer interviews, is there a whole skill set to learn? He goes, no, dude, I asked 3 questions. I said, what do you like about your current platform? What do you dislike about your current platform? And what will it take to get you to switch to Twitch? And that's what he asked every single customer. And then he just heard the common things, and he would build it, and he'd go back to me and said, you told me this is what it would take for you to switch. 2 weeks later, here it is. Are you ready? And then sometimes they're like, no, still. He's like, okay, cool. What's next? And he would just like keep doing that. 3 questions.
That's badass. Just to wrap that up, if you want to learn about this stuff, I think the best book I've ever read on this is called The Mom Test.
Yeah, I love that. Jack recommended me that book.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Too. It's the best thing.
Tiny book, too. Like,
it's a long blog post.
50 pages or something. Yeah.
That book, in terms of your business life, it might change.
Yeah, The Mom Test.
What do you want to
do? So you have something Disney Park. Should we do that?
Let's do that next time.
Okay, we'll do that next time. Scroll up. Did we do the Trader Joe's thing last time? Do you guys remember? No. Okay, so there was this great write-up in the Trends Facebook group by this guy Morgan, or girl Morgan, I'm not sure exactly, but Morgan Key. And it was talking about, hey, the founder of Trader Joe's just died. I think Joe, I don't know how you say the last name, but Joe from Trader Joe's passed away. And, so we dug into the model and said, what is it that makes Trader Joe's work? And there's a bunch of really fascinating things where they basically broke all of the rules. And I thought it was just like a great example of like, when you want to do something different, or you want to like make a splash in an industry, like it pays to just change a bunch of the rules. So some of the things that they do differently. So
let's go through the rules.
So most grocery stores have a ton of SKUs. They're like, oh, people want all the options. We got to carry everything that people ask for. Trader Joe's has on average, I think 4,000 SKUs. An average grocery store will be 40,000. So 1/10 the number of SKUs. The next thing that I thought was interesting was they overstaff, not understaff. So every other grocery store is trying to sort of have minimal labor costs, and they go the exact opposite direction and try to provide like an experience for shopping. They private label basically all of their goods. So how do you, great. I
That seems
overstaff.
impossible.
I overstaff, but that's like expensive. So where do they make their money back?
Yeah.
They make their money back by not buying, not by buying wholesale and selling retail. They actually just private label their stuff and have a way bigger margin on their items.
So what's an example of that? So where's
So
their
like their
products?
tomato sauce, for example, they will have, or salsa. It'll be called Trader Joe's salsa, and people will be like, "Oh, I love Trader Joe's salsa," and it's actually the same exact salsa that somebody else carries. They go straight to that supplier or manufacturer, and they say, "Hey, we want our own line of this." And so it's usually
so Trader Joe's isn't making it.
no, they go to the supplier, but they private label that exact item.
Oh, I didn't know
They
that.
carry it. They get a much bigger margin because they're cutting out the sort of retailer, and they have all this pricing power to go to suppliers with and say, "Hey, we have all these locations, so we are already a big customer from day one. We want you to give us our own brand
That's
of popcorn,
fantastic.
our own brand of this, our own brand of that." And then on the other side, that makes customers love it because people will get addicted to this, and they think, "Oh, that pretzel, that chocolate covered pretzel I loved, I can only get it at Trader Joe's."
But that's not the reality.
Because there's no brand on it, but they could actually get that same thing. They just don't know the brand, and it's from some other place.
I have felt that exact same way about a lot of their products.
And so there was a few other ones that I thought were interesting. I'm going to dig it up, but talk for a second while I just pull
So
up my
I'll tell
email.
you guys a quick story since we were talking about scaling. I talked to Max Mullen at HustleCon, and you listen to this story. He told me that when they first started Instacart,
Who's Max Mullen?
Max Mullen started Instacart.
Okay.
He goes, our first store was Trader Joe's, and they wouldn't let us go in there, and they wouldn't give us all their inventory. He goes, it cost $25,000. I bought everything in the store. We brought it to an apartment.
Took
and
a photo of
we
it?
Took pictures of every single thing.
I love it.
And it was $25,000. He goes, one of everything was about $25,000. And he did that with Whole Foods and then 5 other stores.
That's amazing. Okay, a couple other points that Morgan brought up. So no data collection, so they're not collecting data on their customers.
Yeah, they don't ask for your cell
They don't do
phone.
sales, coupons, loyalty, or advertising. The biggest expense, so their marketing is samples in the store. So they go above and beyond on samples and don't do a whole bunch of other promotional stuff. They expanded very slowly, so they have about 500 locations after 50 years, and so they really went sort of slow and steady with their growth, sort of like a In-N-Out or whatever.
And are they owned by someone at the moment?
Private company. I don't think they got bought by a private. I think it's literally like owned by the sort of
Joe.
original whoever's. There's a couple people involved. And so in the end, their earnings per square foot in their store. So they'll earn $2,000 per square foot revenue. And like Whole Foods will do 1.2 K, and then Walmart will do 600K. So they're way more profitable per square foot way more revenue per square foot because of these different changes they made to the standard model of a store.
I
of a
dig
grocery
that.
store.
We should. I don't know why we didn't. We should publish that.
I think it's a $10 billion company overall.
I thought they were owned by Aldi's for some reason.
You might be right. I don't know on that. But shout out to Morgan. I thought this was a great breakdown. Love it. Do more of that in the groups. We love this stuff, and we'll share the information because, more people need to learn from this stuff.
So that's actually an interesting take, which is what are the interesting components that make something special? So we're doing this thing that we're going to publish on Tuesday on hotels, and I thought that was really interesting. And so it's not live yet, so I haven't been able to read all of it. But basically, a lot of the largest hotel chains, what they do is they don't actually own the property. Sometimes they own the property, but it's all franchised.
Yeah.
And so 90% of their money is made via franchising.
Hilton's, Marriott's, whatever.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so that's one of like the secret sauces, which is you have to do franchising, and it's really expensive. Like could be $10 million to start a Marriott franchise.
Right.
Very expensive.
That's not that expensive. 10,000? That's cheap for a
Sorry,
franchise.
I said 10 million.
Oh, 10 million. Okay.
Like it could be millions of dollars.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot.
It's crazy. And so what we've been doing on Trends and what I've always loved doing, which is what's like the thing that makes something special.
What makes it tick?
Yeah. So for example, with software, typically it's just what makes a great software business is like I'm just riffing here, but I'd have to find the exact numbers, but it's like is the annual revenue per customer at least $5,000? Can you make it so churn is only 4% a month? And then there's probably only 1 or 2 more rules, but it's usually churn, and can it be at least $5,000 a year
For a SaaS business you're talking about.
Yeah, and so I love seeing those like.
Yeah, so what investors do is they see so many deals and they talk to so many founders, and they do this for a number of years. They get to see how these play out. They start to do what they call pattern recognition, which has pros and cons. The pros is great. You can recognize a good thing when it's a good thing. The con is if you're trying to make everything fit your pattern, you'll miss the outliers, and that's a big issue. But but it's still a tool in your tool belt that you should have. So I feel like this should not just be investors that do this. This should be entrepreneurs as well. So you should be looking at different businesses, industries, breaking them down, listening to podcasts like this or others, and trying to identify the patterns and commonalities and try to characterize, okay, what made that business tick? What made this have a different outcome than that? What are the sort of minimum requirements on, let's say, churn or customer value for a SaaS business to work? And start to get these rules of thumb or like kind of common patterns in place in your brain.
Yeah, and what I've been trying to do is figure out those on all types of things.
Yeah.
And that's been exciting. You want to do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more. So there's this thing called Thinks, THNKS.
Wait, where is that on here?
It's just right in the middle.
Oh, okay. What's that?
So I saw this in an Instagram ad or something like that. I thought it was kind of clever. So B2B gifting. So what Thinks does, or I think it's probably thanks that they're trying to do, which is saying thanks.
Oh, that's stupid. I hate cute spelling.
Yeah, cute spelling kind of tripped them up there. So what it does is it's like from your phone, you can instantly just send a little gift to any business acquaintance. So it's like you could send, a bottle of wine. You can send a box of chocolates. You can send an Uber ride. You can send $25, Amazon thing, whatever. So they have a whole bunch of different digital gifts that are. It just looked in the ad. It looked frictionless of like how easy this would be to just send this little thank you to everyone. So for someone like you guys have advertisers. We have guests that come on the podcast, and I know I would love to send them gifts. I know that I should. I know these little things go a long way, even though it just seems like they shouldn't. But I don't take the time to do it. And so I think if somebody actually made a really good B2B gifting platform that did both the actual gifting, so being able to send it to your contact, but also they sort of accounting for it, so keeping track of it in a spreadsheet and all that stuff, maybe helping you expense it. I think that could be a big business. I think a lot of salespeople would use this.
I totally agree. The way, what do you point? Did he do that?
No, there's a company called Alice, and they do artificial intelligence-powered B2B gifting. It's really cool. They basically scan your social profile, and they figure out what your interests are. They send you an example of a gift they want to send to you, like on behalf of the company, and then you're able to either donate the value of that to a charity of your choice or pick from the marketplace a gift of similar value. So it's like
That's badass. I like that. What I would do one or two things. The first thing that I would do is, I think the way that I would set this up is I would make it pretty heavy on Slack or integrate with Salesforce. So we've built a couple Salesforce plugins that we love, and other people have asked us to give it to them.
What's an example of one?
I'm not involved in our Salesforce thing, but basically, like one example is we've connected our QuickBooks and our Salesforce really effectively, which was previously a really hard problem. I mean, that's real nitty-gritty accounting stuff.
Gotcha.
But it was really frustrating. Another thing that we built in Salesforce was, so that the way that we built our business is we can get a line of credit on our invoices, and we've synced it all. We've synced it all up, so our bank knows which invoices we have based off Salesforce and things like that.
Right.
And it's really effective. But what I would do in this is I would hook it up to Salesforce or Slack, and I would make it so you could send coworkers as well. And basically the boss puts your credit card down, and he allocates it or she allocates it, so every employee gets automatically like some number of $10 to $200 a month.
Right.
And you can like type in like, send Henry a gift at San Francisco office.
Right.
And like, for example, I buy gift cards for people all the time where someone has done something really cool, or like Edie was saying her car's, I don't know, if her car's messed up, I'd be like, send Edie $100 Uber gift card.
Right.
I think that would be fantastic. And the way that I would build it is that it would remind every employee how much balance they have left at the end of the month, so you for sure know it's going to get
used.
That's really interesting. And I would also look at what's the fruit baskets that are popular? Edible arrangements.
Edible arrangements, yeah.
I would look at
They Crush.
I think they're publicly traded.
Yeah.
I would go and read all about how they do it and where they say are the biggest markets for their B2B clients.
Is it real estate agents who need to, always be out there? Is it sales? Is it, I don't know, whatever else. So there's some stats that are on here. I don't know who added these, but great. 89%
he did. Alan did.
Nice. Alan, shout out to Alan. 89% of C-suite execs believe that gifting brings people closer together. Okay, love it. And then after receiving a gesture of appreciation, individuals feel like sort of the rule of reciprocity.
Yeah.
So 56% more likely to reciprocate, and I think it's great. I have a friend, Greg Eisenberg, who's all about gifting. Ramon is a great gifter as well.
He's almost obnoxiously good.
Yeah, and so they just are so thoughtful and by little things that go a long way. It just makes you love the person.
Yeah. So another thing I would do to run this company is I would go to, it's a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. He's got this thing called the Rule of Reciprocity. It's summed up in basically, I can do a favor for Shaan, and he's going to do a favor back to me, even if he didn't ask for me to do him a favor, and it is likely that he will repay me back in a disproportionate amount. So, for example, there's been times you could like go up to someone and you could be like, "Hey, you want to? Can I give you a Coke, or can I give you like this small $10 gift?" And I could be negotiating with you for selling a car
And get a deal. Right.
Or, for example, I could say something like, "Hey, can you grab my mail? Or let me grab your mail for you when you're out of town." And then 2 weeks later, I could be like, "Hey, can I borrow your car for 5 days?" And typically people will do it. And so
Right.
I would make the whole tagline of my company, which is like, I always think of like in terms of headlines and copywriting for sales pages. I would make the whole headline all about how you can manipulate. You have to use positive language, but how you can manipulate people by giving gifts. I mean, I would,
what would your headline be?
I would go to that book, the Rule of
Influence,
Reciprocity, and I would find an interesting.
find a great
In fact, maybe that's what the headline would be. It would be the definition of the rule. I would make it look like a definition: rule of reciprocity, like
Yep.
noun or something, and like
Right.
defined as inadequate or disproportional given in response to a gift.
Yeah.
In other words, we help you make more money.
So theirs is, I just went to their website, growing business with gratitude, build strong business relationships through efficient, personalized, and thoughtful gestures of appreciation.
That's whack. That's whack. That sounds like
By
a
the way,
yoga company.
dude, I get every company we mention on here, I get a message that either the CEO starts listening to it or they were already listening to it. So like we talked about OnlyFans, the founders listened to this.
No shit.
We talked about Pipe, the founder reached out, just, hey, I love it. I'm listening
Why don't
to
they
it.
reach out to me?
I talked about Mystery Science. I hung out with the founder yesterday, and he was like, we were
Which
jamming.
one's Mystery Science?
Mystery Science is the amazing business. It's Bill Nye the Science Guy delivered into schools.
Yeah. Wait. Why don't we get those people on here?
We can. Yeah, he was awesome. And I didn't realize he had 3 little exits under his belt, and he was doing this, and the business is just spitting off cash. It's amazing. It's used by like a crazy number. The public thing he told me some other numbers, but I'll say the public thing he told me, which is that 50% of elementary schools in America are active users of their product, which is insane penetration. That just means one classroom within the school. But whatever, you got to 50% of schools being
cares?
active users on a weekly basis for the product. Which
I love that.
Incredible.
Let's get those people on here. Let's go to questions, eh?
Yeah, let's do some quick ones.
All right. So we asked people to do subscribe and unsubscribe and send us a video of them doing it, and we would answer a question that they sent. The truth is a lot of the questions were pretty okay.
Yeah.
So we're gonna avoid some of the okay ones, like what would you do if you had unlimited money? I'm not gonna answer that. I think that's an okay question. Let's see what is a couple good questions. Let's do which one do you want to do?
Okay, so here's one. So love the podcast. I love the podcast sort order hack. I don't know what he's saying. Love the podcast. What's your best SEO hack for a new website? From Steven Sintra. So I know zero about SEO. So for me, I love marketing. I love growth, but you sort of specialize in certain sub practices within that. SEO is not one of mine, but met a guy yesterday and he was like, he was telling me he's growing these content sites. He's got a pretty repeatable model to grow content sites over 100,000 monthly visits, up to 1 million monthly uniques, like within 2 months. And he's done it like 10 times. And I was like, okay, well, what's the formula? Are you an SEO guru or what? He's like, oh no, I don't know SEO. I don't do backlinks. I don't know what a schema is. Like, I don't do any of that stuff. He's like, I'm all content and I just try to rank on quality and relevance. And he's like, basically he just looks at what questions people search for using a tool like Ahrefs or whatever. And so he goes and finds what questions are people searching for, looks at the search result. And if somebody's like, the 20 best tips for closing a sales meeting, he'll do the 30 best tips and he'll put in a YouTube video and he'll like add all this value in. And so he literally just like crushes it on those questions. And sometimes those questions are like, people Google their deepest, darkest secrets. They're not like politically correct things. They'll be like, what's the best way to, tell your girlfriend you're cheating on them or whatever. And so he'll be like, the best way to tell your girlfriend you're cheating on them. Things that most sites are not blogging about. He's like, if there's demand, I will write the best content for it, and I will rank over the course of a couple months, and I'll get my website up.
I'll tell you a quick story real quick. First, I would say my answer to this is I've done the same thing. I've accidentally been good at it. I would just use 2 tools, Ahrefs and then SEO Moz. Or is it SEO? Sorry, Yoast. Yoast. It's a plugin for WordPress. That's
okay.
those are the just use those 2 tools and you'll be fine. When YouTube first started in 2000, from 2010 to 2009 to 2012, I had a YouTube channel that had tens of millions of views, and all I would do is I would find words, things people were searching for, and I would put a video with that exact same title, and then I would make it just a picture and not actually a video, the clickbaitiest picture, and then I would sell space on that video as background music. And I made hundreds of dollars a month when I was a senior in high school doing that. And so if you ever want to see a thumbnail video of a guy, my most popular video, they took it down. It's called Black Guy Beats Up White Guy.
So people were searching for that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
And you could just type in, and what you could do is you could just type in the word white, and it would autofill, or type in the word like fight.
Right.
Because fight videos were popular, or probably still are.
Look at the
autocomplete. And it would all autocomplete. I did that same thing, and for some reason I learned that those fight videos did great.
Okay, another question. So Robert asks, what big picture thing should I be looking at for my podcast to be profitable? It's a medical podcast where I talk about certain diseases and interview people who have them. And then he shouts out the name of it, which is The Patient Will See You Now. All right, so how should he be thinking about making his podcast profitable? Should we tell him as experts of a not so profitable podcast?
Yeah, we do not have a profitable podcast. We don't have.
Well, it's profitable. It's just small relative to like other opportunities we could be doing.
Yeah.
It makes money every month.
What's your answer?
I would basically not try to go for big. So podcasts, you can either go big audience ads, or you can say my podcast is lead gen for other things that I do. And so like I've gotten more value out of businesses and investment opportunities coming from this podcast than the ad revenue we get every month. And so similarly, I think here, if you're the people who are going to listen to this podcast, you know, they might be patients with a certain disease. You might be able to sell some premium ad spot to, some pharmaceutical company, but you probably don't have the scale. And so instead, what I would be looking for is I'd say, cool, if I had a podcast with 5,000 doctors listening to it every month, what can I do with that community? What other adjacent opportunities, business opportunities could I create out of that loyal community? And so I'm a big fan of just build the tribe first. The opportunities reveal themselves as you go. And that's how I would go about it. I wouldn't try to do ads for your podcast.
I've got nothing to add. I think it's a good idea.
Cool.
You want to do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more. Okay, first 3 months of your business. What are your first 3 steps? Very generic question. Is that even useful?
Okay, let's combine it with best. Man, some of these people, they ask the most general questions.
Yeah, okay, here's some advice. I have a phrase, ask a better question, get a better answer. So ask a specific question. Don't ask in the first 3 months of a business, what are your first 3 steps?
It's like saying what art is good.
Right. Or how do love you? Like
yeah.
what?
Like I can't tell you what it's like. How do you do art? It's like, I don't know, man. You want to talk about oil painting, the Renaissance era? Let's talk about that.
Okay, here's a question that I will ask to entertain myself here. What's your favorite interview question when you're interviewing somebody for a job?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how lucky do you think you are?
Nice. Where'd you get that from?
When I interviewed at Airbnb, the founder asked me it.
It's the Jeff Bezos question.
He?
He was the originator of it, or made it popular at least. They asked Jeff Bezos, "What's your favorite question?" He said this, and now a bunch of us have stole this.
Joe Gebbia asked me it, and I told him a 9 or a 10, and he said why, and I explained to him why, and I go, "Why'd you ask me that?" He goes, "People who say they're really lucky are the people I want to be around." Right. I was like, "Why do you think that?" And he goes, "Well, if you think you're lucky, you must be talented and things just fall in your place, or you actually are lucky, and I want to surround myself with lucky people. I don't want to be around unlucky people."
Yeah, the specific of the question is, how lucky of a person do you think you are? 1 to 10. 1, 2, 3 is like, I'm not very lucky. I don't consider myself a lucky person. 4, 5, 6 is I think I'm decently lucky, average, and I think I know why. Or sorry, I don't know why. That's just how it is. And then the sort of the 8, 9, 10s are I consider myself a very lucky person, and here's why. And you want people who are either, if luck is a thing, you want them around you, just like he said. Or if they're not, you want people who are optimistic. And, when you're building a young business, you need optimistic people. And then the why part is interesting, too, because some people know how to engineer serendipity. They know how to engineer lucky situations for themselves, or they're looking out for situations where they may be getting lucky and pounce on those opportunities. And that's, again, somebody you want in an early business.
And then I'm going to ask you the same question, and I think I know what yours is, but I'm going to say another one that is deadly. I love this question. And this is when you back channel on someone and you want to ask about, so let's say I'm interviewing Henry and you're his old boss. And
Reference check.
I'll go, Sean, what would you give Henry out of 10? Just say a number.
I'll give Henry a 7.
Okay. And you're going to give him a 7 because you don't want to completely shit on him, but
right.
You also want to be realistic. And so I would say, okay, well, what can he do to get the remaining 3 points? What can make him a perfect 10? That is the only way I've ever found to get critical feedback on a person, other than saying, "What are they bad at?" Well, they're pretty good, or like
right.
That's what they'll always say.
Yeah, for sure. Because people, like you said, want to be polite, and then people also don't want to lie
right.
based on their own experience.
That is the best way I've ever found to get it.
Love it.
Okay, yours.
Good reference check question for that specific thing.
Yeah, I know what it is, and you should tell it.
I don't remember what, because I've told a story once, but I don't even remember what it was. The founder of Second Life told me once
who you are, who you want to be, or
this one. Yeah, this is a good one. Yeah, I love questions like this. I asked this in job interviews, but I also just asked this in social situations to be awkward. Say, hey, we're gonna play a little game. I want you to fill in the blank. First thing that comes to mind. First answer, best answer. I'm gonna say the first part. You finish it, and I'll say. Life is all right. Let's play. All right, sorry, Henry, you have the mic. So let's play. First answer, best answer. Answer as you go. Life is.
Great.
People are.
Tough.
I am.
Henry.
Oh, okay. The middle one was the only good one.
Yeah. So and then you use it to sort of have a little bit of conversation. You try not to judge people too much off the top of the mind, but I actually just think this is useful for yourself. So this is like your core outlook. It's like. What's life? And you said life is great. Cool. Optimistic, sort of grateful person. Then you said people are tough. That's interesting. Why'd you say people are tough?
Do you have a girlfriend?
Yeah, I do.
Are you guys in a good spot?
You dealing with some stuff right now?
You are?
Yeah, totally.
That's what I
What's a
say.
situation where people have been tough? Tough to deal with.
I don't know. Right now, I'm trying to like figure out where I'm going and figure out what job I am ultimately gonna get a career I'm gonna do, and it's just tough. Just communicating with other people and getting them to realize what you want and making them see what you see in yourself. I guess.
People are tough to persuade or tough to get on your page.
That's a great question. You totally have you can see what he struggles with and values.
Yeah, and then the last one, which is I am, and you went with Henry, which
That's
is a
a
very
lame answer.
literal answer.
Yeah.
If you were going to do another one, what would it be? I am.
I don't know. A student. I don't know.
Okay. And then the second question I'll kind of ask is, so I usually pause there. I do the psychoanalysis, and then a couple things happen. People are like, oh, okay. And they just want to leave because they feel so uncomfortable. Or they'll be like, what are yours? Cool. I like that. That's a good sign when you ask, what are yours? And then I'll tell them mine, and then they'll do the same thing back to me. And the last question is I tell them, I said, one thing I did was I did those answers top of mind, and I didn't really like what I said. And then I just reassessed it. I was like, what do I think the answer should be for me? What do I want my answers to be? What do I want my outlook of life, people, and myself to be, right? What do I want my mental model to be? And then I revised it. And then the best people come back a few days later, and they're like, hey, by the way, I came up with my own, and here's mine. And those are the people I'm going to be friends with you for a long, long time because you're like me. You like to do this stuff.
Clip.
Cool. I think we're done, by the way. I got to call the guy from Levels. I got to get my glucose monitor installed for the weight loss challenge.
Oh, okay. We'll do an update on that. I didn't have to call him.
I think we're supposed to.
Huh. Okay. Well,
You could join me on this call.
click
together.
share. Or is that is there a button, like a share button? If there is, do it. Let's help us get more listeners. Thank you.
Yeah, tell a friend. Bye.